Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Community Leaders. I'm your host, Patricia, and I'm here with the esteemed Pat Miller, the McLennan County Commissioner of Precinct 2. Isn't it awesome to say that? So I just want to let our students and our faculty staff get a little background of you. Let's start way back. Let's go back. Okay. Let's go back to New York.
Oh, we're going way back.
We're going back to to your life in New York as a little girl before you even moved back. Before you guys moved to Waco. So what was that like? The experience?
Well, first, let me say thank you for this opportunity to sit down and have this conversation with you, and it's, I guess, even more special because of the relationship that I have with you and with your family. So I'm so very proud of what you are doing now, and thank you for this opportunity. But yes, we will go back. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, but I am here in Waco because Waco, Texas is my mom's home. She was raised here. She graduated. She was a 1946 graduate of A.J. Moore High School and a 1949 graduate of Jarvis Christian College. She met my dad here, who was stationed at Fort Hood, and they married, and then they moved to New York where all of his siblings lived. My dad is from Charleston, South Carolina, but all of his family was in New York, and so that's how I come to be born in New York. I was there until I was at the age of 10, and all of my memories are positive of living there. I understand, though, since that's a good 40 to 50 years ago, that a lot probably has changed. But growing up there was a wonderful experience.
And I kind of want to go back to you said your mom graduated from A.J. Moore High School. Because we often throw, in this area of Central Texas, throw that name. And do people really understand who A.J. Moore was and the type of citizen he was to our community?
No, you're right. You're right. I think I'm so proud that she was a graduate of A.J. Moore High because who Professor A.J. Moore was. He was a Paul Quinn college professor. And one of the things he looked out at the community of Waco, and there was not a source for young African American children to be educated. And so he created the first school for African American young people, K through 12, here in Waco, Texas. I believe that school, it goes on to serve several generations of African Americans. And it holds on until we start talking about integration. But people should really be impressed with what he was able to do in the late 1800s, going into the early 1900s, and how education was such an integral part of African American life right after slavery.
Yeah, my mom graduated from A.J. Moore as well, so that's why I understand the rich history and the importance of education and even what Paul Quinn did for Waco.
Exactly.
And I was so young when Paul Quinn left, and I didn't know how important that HBCU was, and like how it filtered and it brought educators to Waco, and they stayed and they educated people. But yeah, that influence. So let's move on and let's go to your experiences when you moved. So you're around 10 years old, you're moving into Waco. That's a big change because you live in kind of like city area to now to more like a more, I won't say rural, but more small town.
It was a smaller community.
Yeah, small community.
Because I grew up riding the subway. In fact, my elementary school years, I went to 2 elementary schools. One in Brooklyn and then the other in Queens. I'm maybe one of a small population of people. I have the dubious experience of 2 cycles of integration.
Gotcha.
And so when I am in the 2nd grade, New York Public Schools goes through their integration process. And so at PS 73, which Brooklyn is a large borough, and that was a large elementary school. To be bused to PS 68 in Queens, which is another large school, and Queens is a large borough. So there was a little of a transition coming from 73 and 68, and then enrolling in R.L. Smith
Gotcha.
in Waco, Texas. I think I'm the better for it, and I am glad I had all the experiences that I had. PS 68 was okay. Like I said, I had the dubious experience of being in that first class of integrating that elementary school,
Right.
which was unique.
That's interesting because so you come from integration in New York, and then your parents move you to Waco, and then they start their integration process as well, right? Was it your junior
Right,
year?
but when I get to Waco, it's still segregated.
Okay. So you come from New York, where it was starting to desegregate.
Right.
Okay. So you kind of getting to know students who are all walks of life.
Right.
Okay. So that experience. How was that experience? Did you even notice? Because you were in elementary school.
Well, and that was the unique thing about New York is that PS 73 and PS 68 were both integrated.
Okay.
It's just that 73 was majority minority campus.
Gotcha.
But all students, all cultures attended PS 73. When I went to PS 68, it was mostly white.
Okay.
It was mostly white. When I transitioned and I moved to Waco, Texas, R.L. Smith is all African American.
American. Okay.
And I don't know, it was so unique and different to me that I just thought it was the coolest thing. I loved it.
So you love your experience coming. So okay, so now you go through. Tell me like some life lessons you learned by just coming through R.L. Smith and coming back to Waco.
Well, the South was different. The South was different.
To say the least.
Even for a small child.
Okay.
The South was different. One of the things, perhaps, that I loved about my experience at R.L. Smith and about G.L. Wiley is how special teachers and administrators made me feel.
Okay.
It was not, I will say it was not because I was African American that was not what I experienced in New York. I think we were so large that it was mainly about making sure they educated students because we had large classes.
Gotcha.
And I didn't really get a sense of being an individual. I have smaller classes when I come to R.L. Smith. Like I go from maybe about 28 to 30 kids in a class, and when I'm at R.L. Smith, it might have been 16 or 17 of us in a class. So there was a lot of individual one-on-one, and I thought it was real special that I knew like my sixth grade teacher, Abby Booker.
Okay.
You know, her sister lived down the street from where I lived.
Okay.
So there were experiences like that that made my educational experience at R.L. Smith just a little bit more intimate, a little bit more valued, and it made me feel a little bit more special.
Yeah, I can see that. And like how going, because even I went to Wiley, I didn't, and I could see like, because I know my grandmother's house is in East Waco, and your family rooms are in East Waco, so you knew the people in that community, and you knew, and they communicate. So you got in trouble in school, they will hear about it before you got home from school.
I didn't get in trouble in school.
You never got in trouble in school?
I did not get in trouble in school.
Oh, so you was the little smart, sit up front in the classroom?
I didn't like punishment.
Oh, yeah, I got in trouble a lot. We could probably talk about that in another episode.
Okay.
I like doing the work. It's just, I don't know, I just like to talk.
They should have kept you busy. That's all. It was their
I
fault.
think that's what it was. That's what I was trying to express to my mother.
Oh.
That it was enough. I didn't have enough things to do. It was just.
I bet that went well.
So let's move on to your experiences. Like, what are some of your teachers? What are some of your teachers? You talk about one teacher. Let's talk about some other teachers you remember, like in Wiley, going up to like before you even get to high school.
Okay. Like I said, my grandmother was the cafeteria manager at R.L. Smith.
Okay.
And I didn't grow up with a whole lot. We just didn't know we didn't have a whole lot.
Okay.
Because we had everything we needed. You know, we had love, we had support.
Right.
And so the material things weren't a big topic. And one of the things that I always loved is that she had to be at work at 6 o'clock. And so to make sure I got to school and I was safe, she'd get me up and we would walk to school together.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's an experience now that she's gone that I think I'll always cherish, you know, walking to school with my grandmother. And so Miss Hicks was the principal
Oh,
when I was at
yeah.
R.L. Smith. And those were individuals who would call you by name, and not just your name. They would call you by the name that your family called you.
Yeah.
You know, so like, again, it goes to how more intimate
Yeah.
my experience was at R.L. Smith. And so for people that have a relationship with you, you just don't want to let them down. So you do your best and you give your best. At G.L. Wiley, you know, growing up, I was a teenager, but I was impressed with individuals like Faye Weaver Lee, Miss Woods, Miss Fulbright. I had excellent teachers all the way through 7th, 8th, and 9th. And if you didn't think you were smart, they told you were smart, and then they made you become the best that you could be. And so when I look back on the fact that I was on honor roll, I'll never forget when we graduated, you know, they put all the A students on the stage.
Yeah.
Oh, you should have saw my grandmother's face. When I was one of the students that when you walked in, I went to the stage. I said, oh, I made her proud. That made me feel good. So, again, I don't think I would have had that experience in New York because the schools and the campuses were so large.
Gotcha.
I must say.
Okay.
And it felt like being with family and being home. So you're right, it was a transition from going to riding the subway and my sister and I, you know, going out on Saturdays, and there were more shops on Saturdays. The food, I always say you don't have Chinese food unless you have New York Chinese food.
Agreed.
You don't have pizza unless you have New York pizza. But I'm glad I came to Waco.
Okay.
I'm glad I came to Waco.
I want to go back to your grandmother just for a little bit, because I want you to explain some of those jewels of life lessons she taught you, even on those walks to school. Like a few of those life lessons that you kind of are taking with you even now that she taught you.
Oh, she really did. You know, older people instill wisdom in young people. That's why you hear a lot of people saying, oh, to know what I know now, and if I knew it then. It's what life gives you that transcends into or transfers into wisdom. And we would talk about how school was going, how my classes were going, what were my favorite subjects. And then she would tell me, you know, what subjects she liked when she was in school. She gave me a love for books. She talked about places that she wished she'd been able to go to. So since I couldn't go either, but I could read about them. Right. So she instilled a love for books. She gave me some rules on how to get along with people, you know, interpersonal skills. And I think the value in those conversations is that I wasn't having them at a time when, you know how you do something, you have to be corrected. They weren't in moments where you had to be corrected, and so now I have to tell you this. But they were more in moments of just casual conversation. And so I think that's probably why they stuck.
So you mentioned your love of books. I'm going to go here. Tell the audience at least one of your favorite books or two are books they should read.
Oh, I tell you what, especially if you are going to go into public service, elected office, Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman is a must read. Because what Howard Thurman does is he parallels the African Americans' experience in America with Jesus's experience with the Roman government. And he talks about how the life experience of the Jews under Roman rule and still having to exist and have a life, although there is a segment of society that at times can be oppressive. And in America, the reality for African Americans is that we are existing under a system that at times can be oppressive. And so what some psyche may do is be defensive or retreat. And what Howard Thurman's book teaches is that African Americans have to still look at their life experience through the eyes of being a Christian. And so you have to understand that your existence and your journey still needs to be productive, you still need to be successful, and it still needs to be love in your heart, understanding that this is not a unique experience to a group of people, and that any other method is not going to be productive in the end to you either. It's a wonderful read, especially when I have to sit in an environment where, and I just truly believe America is the best system. I see America for what it can be.
Gotcha.
We have some things we have to fix, but if we looked at systems of government across the globe, we do have the best one. If we look at how people of less means flourish, if there's a place on the globe where if you have nothing, how you can come to have something, it's America.
Gotcha.
And so in doing that, if I'm going to tell people to believe in this country, one of the best books that I was ever able to read that made me feel that I wasn't a dual person, but that it was a one brain thinking of taking experiences, and now this is the best path forward. It was in reading Howard Thurman's book, Jesus and the Disinherited. You should read that book.
I will. I'm gonna get it. Yeah, I'm getting that book. I can see it. Oh, and as we discuss that book and moving on, and I want to kind of flow into like the system after you finish junior high and you go into high school and you start, and that's when integration starts to come to Waco in Texas. And how was your experiences and what's some of those life lessons you learned during the educational period in your life?
You know, like I said, the South was different. I don't know if because I was younger, or if just the experience was different. But in New York, I cannot remember blatant examples of racism in an educational environment. I cannot. It might have happened. I can't really discern that I saw that. But I do know that the year that I go into my 10th grade, I'm going into the 10th grade, is 1973. And that is the year that Waco ISD finally begins the busing process in order to achieve integration in the schools across the district. And I could have been a little defensive because the way they drew the line, everyone that I was really close to in elementary school and everyone I was close to in junior high school ended up going to Jefferson Moore. And I ended up going to Richfield High School. And so I didn't have any of my close friends with me. I had people I knew. But from the neighborhood, because everyone on Kellum and going back to Hillsborough Drive and then over to Carver Park and all of those neighborhood associations or those neighborhood additions, Sharondale and Golson Heights. I went with those students to Richfield. And I'll never forget, on the first day of school, now, and I'm the youngest grade on the bus with 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students. And we drive up and we sit and we sit and we sit, and I'm wondering when we're going to get off the bus. But it comes to find out that someone had written right where the bus stopped and was supposed to let the students out in front of the steps, N-word, go home. And one of the students on the bus finally saw on the sidewalk what was written on the sidewalk and said, "Oh, that's why they're not letting us off the bus." Well, after the bus driver realized we saw it, then they let us off the bus. But we spent about 20 minutes with them trying to figure out how, I guess, to let us off the bus and we not see the sidewalk. I don't know why we were on the bus. But all I kept remembering was, okay, well, that's clearly a message they don't want us here. And I just didn't understand why I wasn't at Jefferson Moore. I didn't want to be there anyway. So, And I think America will be able to really grapple with its race issue when it realizes that I think we have more in common than we are different. And if you don't want somebody around you, 9 times out of 10, the feeling's kind of mutual. So let's just start from a place of, let's say we do want to be around each other, because 9 times out of 10, neither one of us want to be in the room.
Right.
So I think we'll get along better once we realize it's an even teal. But I remember I went, and then when I told my mom at the end of the day, you know, when I came back home, when I told her what happened, well, and then, you know, children across the whole neighborhood and all different areas were telling,
Parents.
you know, telling their parents what happened. And so then, you know, when it goes into the adult realm, it gets a little bit more revved up. But that just probably wasn't a good first impression. Right. Although I do have a good high school experience, but it took some time to get me from I don't want to be here to, okay, I'm here, let me make this work.
What are some of those high school, maybe administration staff, principals, teachers that kind of stand out to you, that really made your experience good, made you feel welcome?
2 stand out. And I think with Mr. Hutchins, there was a vice principal at Richfield. Okay. And he may have been gone by the time your generation came through. But I can remember one, you know, we're walking from class to class, and by this time, I think I was Secretary of Student Council. Okay. And he stopped me and he goes, Chisolm, he said, how's that report card look? And I went, how a report card look? And I said, I got a good report card. But he wanted to see it. Okay. Well, all right, I'll show it to you. And he went, you did good. I said, I told you I did good. And I think I was more defensive and closed. But after the interaction, I went, oh, okay, he's a nice guy. Okay. And I warmed up to him throughout the school year. But my favorite teacher was Mr. Cothart. Okay. I don't know if he was there. He was an English teacher.
He was there, yeah.
Oh, if you didn't get Mr. Cothart, you really did miss out. Okay. I needed him. He was an 11th grade English teacher. Okay. And I needed him because of my 10th grade English teacher. Okay. Who, my 10th grade English teacher really felt that the new students coming on campus just probably needed just the basics. Okay. And so I went from an advanced curriculum in English at G.L. Wiley to like this real basic stuff. And I didn't really like that class. I don't remember a lot of it. I got through it. Okay. But Mr. Cothart challenged us, because I remember we were sitting in class and he said, okay, for next week I'm going to need you all to read the introduction to the Canterbury Tales, and then, and you know, the introduction to the Canterbury Tales is told in Old English. Yes. It's written in Old English. Yes. And he said, and before we really get into the study of the story, everyone is going to get up and they're going to recite the introduction. Okay. And so I went, oh, you know, it's probably, so when you look at it, it's just like about a 2/3 of a page, and then when you start reading it, you realize it's in Old English. Yes. And so someone asked him, was he going to get that translated for us? Right. And he said, no, you're going to memorize the introduction to the Canterbury Tales. So you can imagine how much fun it was to hear a group of 11th grade students reciting the introduction to the Canterbury Tales in Old English. But I still remember some of it. Oh, wow. And that was one of the best teachers I ever had. Good. Because his whole thing was, okay, if you're in my class, you must be smart. Right. So let's go for it. Okay. So he challenged you guys, and that's what you needed at that point. Did you find it interesting, like, but you was able to maneuver the school and like create friends, because you know you left your other group of friends at the other high school. So you was able to find a group of friends you kind of felt like was your people, like your group? I did. Now, because I grew up at a time that young people went to church during the week. Right. And so A lot of the friends that I went to elementary school
Okay.
and junior high school with, I still had at church.
Gotcha.
So I never replaced those friendships.
Okay.
I still have those friendships to this day.
Okay.
Because I still was able to see them at church. But I did have people that I sat at the cafeteria,
Yeah.
you know, in the cafeteria during lunch with. I still had those, but I retained the closeness of the people that I grew up through elementary
Gotcha.
school and junior high school.
So as you grow up, now you're growing up, you're in high school, you graduate high school, you move on, and I kind of want to maneuver into like your political career, like how you get politically active. Like, what was the first start that made you get politically active in our community? Like, before you even meet Commissioner Gibson, like, what was that light that lit that fuel to say, I think I really want to be a part of this thing we call community and community government?
Well, I grew up in a home where politics was discussed.
Okay.
And I grew up at a time of some growing up during the fight in the adoption of the Civil Rights Act and the
Gotcha.
Voting Rights Act. So there's a lot of political talk
Okay.
in my home. I still remember being a little girl sitting on the floor in the living room when my mom and dad watched the funeral of President Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
We watched the funeral of Dr. King, and I remember watching the news coverage when Robert Kennedy was shot when he was running for president. So I grew up in a really cool political time.
Yeah.
And so politics was discussed in my home. I remember that was in New York. I remember in Waco, Texas, living with my grandmother and my mother. It was the year that George Wallace was running for something in the Democratic primary. I think he was in a Democrat. He was running as a Democrat.
Right, which is interesting, but
And my mom and I remember at the end of they were having a heated discussion, and the last part I remember hearing, or the only part that really that I retained, was when my mother said, "I can't believe you, Mom. I can't believe you voted for George Wallace." And I remember my grandmother saying, "Yeah, but he's a Democrat."
oh, so that's why she was voting, because he was on the Democratic
He was a Democrat. And so I guess, so when I go to college,
Right.
and they came and kind of gave their spiel, organizations give their spiel. When the NAACP, encouraged young college students to start coming to the meetings, I did. And so I became
Okay.
a part of our college chapter. And those were really interesting meetings. The conversations were interesting meetings. But it was when I came home and I was asked to volunteer on Commissioner Gibson's then run for city council.
City council, okay.
When he
So
ran
you had
for
to make
city
commission,
council.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so that's when I come home from, I'm home back from college, and that's when I think everything just kind of comes to a head.
Yeah.
But just growing up in my home, it was just a place where politics was spoken.
Yeah. Because I know you even did some of the legwork for those campaigns. Like, you knocked on doors and you visited people community. Like, how was that experience molding? Like, you saw people in the community at their homes, you can communicate with them. And I think, like, you was even building did you even think that you were building up to, like, where you are now? Like, even those little bitty things years ago, just knocking on doors for other people and getting to know people in the community?
Well, I didn't. If you think about the movies that we see, like if you think about the movie Boycott, if you think about the movie Mississippi Burning, those are movies that show you the workers. If you
Yes.
think about the Rosa Parks movie,
Yes.
you don't really focus on Rosa Parks. You focus on the people
Yeah.
who are working. If you're looking at Boycott, in fact, Boycott is just a whole telling of what that committee did, and then Dr. King kind of
Right.
comes into it. And so I didn't really focus on who the person
Okay.
as much as the work. So I really kind of liked, the work is what drew me to it. And I would find myself walking a lot with Miss Gibson. With Mrs.
Okay.
Gibson.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And back
yeah.
in those days, the neighborhoods were really inviting because it was a new thing. Nowadays, candidates always are knocking on doors, or they have a team of people always knocking on doors. Back then, candidates didn't knock on doors in the African American community.
Okay.
Because African American candidates were not that frequent.
Got you.
And so usually what you got is maybe you saw that white candidate at church and you thought, well, he came to church.
Right.
He's a good person. So this was a new wave of political activism, knocking on doors. And people were always so happy to see us and wanted to talk. And it was just really interesting and exciting to just kind of watch a conversation.
Yeah.
And then I'd be walking with her and I'd have the flyers. So I thought I was special too. So, so I think it was the engagement with people and seeing how satisfied and how their sense of, I'm trying to think of the word, but they exuded like a sense of being a part of it, of feeling important.
Okay.
And so then they made you feel that you were the reason that they were so satisfied with the system.
Got you.
Okay.
It's like you was almost a part of that system that they now became to like or love.
Right.
Got you.
Or believe in.
Or believe in. Got you.
Believe in.
So you go from walking with Commissioner Gibson's, Cokie Gibson's wife, or his wife, and so now, what do you think made him decide to make you a part of his long-lasting team? Because you for how many years did you work with him?
28.
Because I always think of you, and I think even people in the community, we don't think of you working underneath, or I look at you working with him like hand in hand, side by side, because you was like you was everything. So 28 years, like what you think he saw in you that made him want to, you the person for this position?
Well, I tell you what I saw in him.
Okay.
I met them working on his city council seat.
Okay.
Okay. Between then and when I'm going to see him again, I'm now working for Francis Worthy at the Women's Resource Center.
Okay.
Under a Project Texas grant under then Governor Ann Richards, my favorite Texas governor.
That's from this area?
Yes.
Yes, but yeah.
But she created solutions for problems.
Okay.
You know, it's one thing to highlight problems, and now we're in an age where people can always tell you what's wrong, but they don't necessarily give you a solution. And when they decided that they needed a welfare to work initiative to get people off the welfare rolls, she created a program that did exactly that. Okay. And I was so proud to be a part of the initiative here in Waco because she did it on all of the TSTC campuses throughout their system.
Gotcha.
But I ran the child care stipend portion of it at the Waco campus. And so I'm at a luncheon, a TSTC had a Black History luncheon.
Okay.
And afterwards, an announcement after the keynote speaker, and it was now Commissioner Gibson.
Okay.
He was running the first time for county commissioner.
Okay.
And I said, "Oh, okay." I hadn't seen him in a while.
Okay.
And he came and he gave his platform. He told us what a county commissioner is and why he felt that the precinct he was running in needed to have his representation and his voice. And he started kind of outlining all of the issues that community or that precinct was suffering from, and no one over generations had ever addressed any of these really acute problems. And at first, you know, I was just kind of listening, but then I really started, I said, wait a minute, he's really talking about something. And of course, he's talking about an area that I'm still living in. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't have time to talk to people afterwards, but I remember being really impressed with what he said. And so when the election came up, I made sure I voted, but my family made sure. Ever since I was 18, the first person I voted for president was Jesse Jackson. I told you I grew up in a great time.
Okay.
I voted in the first primary for African American to be president on the Democratic ticket. But so I voted for him, And what I was always struck by was just his deep love, not just for African Americans, for poor people.
Yeah.
For the plight of poor people. And it just so happened they happened to be black and brown people mostly.
Okay.
But he was a champion of women's rights.
Yeah.
And when I realized, if we look at a system, if we're going back to Jesus and the Disinherited, and we're looking at a system that tends to marginalize people who are not cookie cut.
Okay.
This was one person standing on the peripheral talking about defending and making a pathway of success for those people. And that's what drew me into him. So I was just going about my life, and one of the ladies at the campus, she said, "Hey, I know you like it here, but look at this job description." She said, "I get job descriptions all the time, but this one says you." And it was his job description for the administrative assistant.
Okay.
And I said, "Whoa, it sure does pay good."
Good benefits too.
Yeah, but then I thought about it, I said, but wait a minute, I got a really great job.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working on a college campus.
Yeah.
You know, the coming and going was my schedule. I was making a difference in people's lives. The program I was running was needed, so I felt like I was needed. So I said, wait a minute. But then I started reading what his job description was, and I went, wait a minute. It was like doing what I was doing and taking it to another level. So I said, okay, I can do this. So I did. I put in my application and sent my resume, and then and then I did a little extra research.
Okay.
At that time, he was hosting a leadership luncheon.
Yes.
He was doing it every week.
Okay.
Every week on Mondays.
Yes.
And at R.L. Smith.
Okay.
At the R.L. Smith building, which had now turned into the Black Chamber.
Okay.
The Black Chamber was housed there. And so I said, I need to go to that luncheon, and I need to let him know that I put in my application. Okay. And then a little voice said, you have work to do.
Yeah.
You may not be able to go to the luncheon. So I pushed it back in my head, and sure enough, about 11:30, my boss came in and she said, we're going to go to Lester's luncheon today. And I went, well, that has to be God. And so I do. We went to the lunch. I cannot remember the presentation. We ate after the luncheon.
Okay.
And everybody's leaving out. I walked up to him and I said, you may not remember me. I worked on your campaign. And he said, oh, hi, good to see you again. I said, all I want to tell you is that you have posted an opening for the administrative assistant. Okay. I'm not asking you to hire me, but I am asking for you to read my application and my resume. And before he could say anything, his wife came up and started talking. And so he never got really a chance to respond back to that. But I was so glad that he called me for an interview.
Good. So now you with Commissioner Gibson and you working so I mean, we talk about almost 3 decades.
Yeah.
So I guess I know this is probably impossible for you to do, but just share with the audience just a few of the life lessons, the jewels that he gave you. Because but the audience know, I was one of your internships. Mm-hmm. I did an intern, so Commissioner Gibson always got back to community. And one thing that I love that he did was he did a summer internship program, and he invited students. We had the application process, and he invited students to actually come intern and understand what a county commissioner does. Right. And until then, I really had never worked in government, especially city government. So I was really new to what city government looks like in the everyday activities of city government. So that was a valuable experience I learned in that summer program with him. So, that's just my little spiel. But tell us of your decades of work, just things you will take with you for the rest of your life.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to start with your intern period, because what I bet you do not realize, he started that program. He said for students who had gone off to college and they were coming home for the summer, and they were going to have a hard time finding a job because you all were coming back, late,
right,
in the summer.
Right.
And so you didn't have to have a wealth of experience. You just had to be smart.
Okay.
We had to be able to have someone in there who could navigate the material.
Okay.
And if you will remember, one of the projects that you did is that you spent a month with Constable John Johnson at Greenwood
Yes,
Cemetery.
I remember that.
Well, now it will all have a satisfying feel to
Okay.
you. Because what you did is, at that time, there was a concern.
Yes.
That they were stacking out of Greenwood Cemetery.
Yes.
And they had to find out who is in that cemetery.
Right.
And the only way they could find it out,
Only way.
someone had to go out there.
Yes.
And they had to physically chart those
Yes.
tombstones. And that's what you did.
I did, and I was be honest. So the commissioner asked me to do it. I was okay with doing it until I got out there. Cause we talking about Texas summer.
It was the summer.
And I was dressed nice because I had to look nice to go into the office. So, but I would have to go.
I said, Felicia, you come dressed in jeans. I said,
but
you have to work outside with John.
I know, but then my mom was like, no, you go in the commissioner gifts office, so you make sure you look nice because you never know what environment you have to be in. So I still would come, but it was hot.
Yes,
and he was there with me, and we charted all those great. And of course, I'm like, this. We're
I still have that document, but I had to copy it.
Okay.
Because the city of Waco took over all of the maintenance.
Okay.
And before they could do it, though, they needed a place to start on who is exactly out there.
Okay.
And so when they did that, I made a copy of Felicia's report.
Oh, wow.
And we emailed it to the city of Waco.
Oh, wow.
So they used your document as a starting point when they...
You gonna make me cry.
When they began the process
Yeah.
to organize Greenwood Cemetery,
Yeah.
they used your document as a starting.
And it's interesting because when I started doing that project, and like I remember like towards the beginning, I said, oh, I'm documenting people, my ancestors. So the work became okay.
Yeah.
I said, I'm documenting people that came before me that made a difference.
R.L.
in this community.
Smith.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
some
I said,
famous people out there.
yes. So, and my mom was like, you gonna go and you gonna do exactly what he gonna tell you to do. If you gotta go to the cemetery, and I went to the cemetery, I was scared at first. And my mom was like, nobody's gonna hurt you in the cemetery. They're all gone. They're gone. So you'll be fine. That's probably the safest place for you to work. But yeah, so that's what kept me going every day. I'm like, I'm documenting the people that actually laid the foreground for me to come and be a part of this community. So it was a labor of love, and it was awesome. I'm glad I had the opportunity to do it.
And I'm going to tell you, young people sometimes, they feel that we give them busy work.
Right.
Everything that is done in that office is needed for a purpose.
Gotcha.
And so even though you may have thought, what are they going to do with
did.
this?
I did. I'm not going to lie.
Okay. So now, when you pass by the newly renovated
I am.
cemetery, you can say, hey, this would not have been possible had it not been for me.
Okay. And that was... I might have been, 18? Like, because like my first, I was young. I was 18. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but you were a go-getter. You were
I
tough.
was.
I can't even imagine you being afraid out there, because one thing I always knew, I said, oh, yeah, she's a go-getter. She's tough. I said, but she's smart enough that she's going to go out there and arrange this information in a way that it'll be usable when she finishes.
Yeah, that's what my I was like, I need to make sure that anybody can read this document and understand where these wonderful people lie to rest. So that was my goal. All right, it's getting we probably moving too long. We different. Like, look, So you're working with commissioner. Oh, what's some jewels you learned from him? One or two jewels you learned from this commissioner gift. Then we're gonna go into your road.
Okay, I will tell you this, and it's the prize. It's the diamond of all diamonds. One of the things that made me respect him so much was his love for servanthood. Yeah. I think communities, and not just African American communities, but communities suffer.
Yes.
When the representative that they have does not see themselves as a servant, does not see themselves as someone that is supposed to represent them. A lot of times we put people in office who feel that they know what's best, and I kind of call that an overseer attitude. But he had a servant attitude, meaning he talked to people.
Yeah.
And I could always tell when he was out walking the precinct, because all of a sudden I get a phone call and he would ask me a way out question, and I would go, He's talking to people on the street again.
Okay.
Look up this or look up that. But he had an intense love for everybody. You know, he never met a stranger. And he always wanted to make everyone's life better. He wanted to make it better. And I think that's why I worked so hard for him, is because I had so much respect for his mission and his purpose. And so one of the last things he told me, when I told him I was going to run and he gave me his support, he said, don't you worry about who's not for you.
Okay.
If you always had a people. He says, as long as you always had a people on your side, it doesn't matter about anybody else.
Okay.
And that is true.
That is true. Because I remember when you first said you was running, and I remember just talking to people in the community, and people were like, oh, I thought she was already commissioner. I was like, no. She was not commissioner. But you already gained respect for the people.
Oh.
Like, for years. And I remember it's interesting, Miss Napier, who's now passed, but I remember having a conversation about you with her.
Oh.
And she said, why would we not vote for her? She's been helping and running office for years now. She's who will run against her? Why would you run against her? She knows it. She understands the people. We know who she is. She's been in community for generations. Why would you not vote for her? So she had your back. And so you didn't even have to campaign a lot.
Yes, I did.
You did. But most people in the community already knew. Why would you not vote? So let's talk about your campaign. So you said, yes, you did have to campaign a lot.
Yes.
Tell us about that experience in campaigning and trying to get community to make sure that you are the next person for this position.
And it is a great thing that the voter vets its person that they're going to vote for. Yes. We should. We should not be as sheep to the slaughter voting for people for office. We should get to know them. We should know what they stand for. And if they stand for the things that we stand for, then we should elect and put them in office. So I did not feel that it was a burden to have to earn the vote of the people in Precinct 2. Okay. Because it's one thing to be an administrative assistant. It's one thing to be really good with paperwork. It's one thing to be able to research. It's another thing to be able to effectively advocate on behalf of a group of people. And that is, in essence, what an elected official does. I think that's the difference. Okay. And I'm going to say that one more time because that's what's key. It's another thing to be able to advocate and effectively represent people. People don't need, in my opinion, they don't need to be shepherded. Okay. Because everyone wakes up in the morning, they go to work, and their thoughts are, how can I make my life better, the life of my children better, my family better? You know, that is something that consumes us from time to time. So when you look for an elected official, you need someone who kind of aligns with your values. Yeah. Who's going to fight to help you make your life better and the life of your children better. You know, the voter is not the servant. Right. The elected official is the servant. Wow. And so I had to show people that I had a vision and a message. They knew what his was. Right. They needed to know, well, okay, yeah, she's smart, but when she looks at us, when she looks at this precinct, what are her ideas? Where is she going to take us? And if I didn't have a message, I don't think they should have put me in office. But I did, because I have a vision for Precinct 2 and McLennan County, and a message for families. And I still stand behind my thought. America needs to be America for everyone. Okay. America's not owned by just a group. Okay. America needs to be America for everyone. And we'll be perfect when every child who grows up sees that and feels that. Oh, wow. When they know, you know what, I'm an American, so I can be anything I want to be. Right. That's when we've got it right.
Oh, wow. So take us through just a day in the life of a county commissioner. I know it can vary, because to some days you might do commissioner's course and talk to the people, like just one day in the life of a county commissioner.
Well, and you know, county government sometimes it's not really that eventful. and then sometimes there are issues that put it on the front burner.
Yeah.
That put it on the front burner. Throughout the week, there are just some ingredients that you have to have.
Okay.
Because what McLennan County has is a commissioner precinct when it comes to our roads and bridges.
Right.
So if you take a county commissioner, one half of that person is that they serve on the court as the administrative arm of county government. The commissioner's court is the administrative arm of county government. And as a county commissioner, you're 1/5 a member of that 5-member court. Okay, so that's the group that you mostly see in the paper.
Right.
But then McLennan County has a commissioner's precinct system where it is the commissioner that runs a crew that is responsible for building and maintaining the roads and bridges in the unincorporated areas. You remember that part?
Yes.
So I'm going to always start my day with a conversation with the foreman.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a foreman, and then I have 14 crewmen. I have 17 spots I'm hiring, but I have a crew of right at 16 with a foreman. And so we always start the morning with, okay, this is how yesterday's projects wrapped up. We have a plan, because we do a summer plan at the end of each winter. So we have a plan based on what we're doing. This is how yesterday looked. Now we're going into tomorrow, and then whatever kind of special things have come onto his plate, we navigate through that. We navigate through his projects. We navigate through his equipment. After that, then I turn my sights downtown. And then that's twofold, because then there's county work, then there's precinct work. You know, county work is like the rowing regatta that I have coming to Trading House Lake. The Mother's Day walk that we're going to have. There's some county projects that I have to keep up with. And then like WIMDEC, there's just some projects that are just strictly county. And then precinct, I may have like Her Skin. Yeah. A nonprofit that wanted to host a project for mothers who lost their sons to senseless violence. I might have to meet with MASK, that's Mothers Against Senseless Killings. I met with a young lady today who wants to start up a mentor program. So I meet with different people in the community, might have to meet with churches, sometimes it's just information updates. So a day just depends on what I've scheduled, who I've scheduled to talk to, but the ingredients are always going to be the same. I'm going to spend some on road and bridge, I'm going to spend some on county work, and I'm going to spend some on precinct work.
Got you. I want to go into, you brought up the Her Skin and the MASK program. I want you to talk about those programs for our audience so they can understand. Maybe they might want to get involved.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Again, County Commission has a lot of discretion because as long as he's satisfying his bosses, he's okay. And his bosses are the voters.
Right.
So that's when you will see, like for instance, Commissioner Gibson when he did Project Exodus. Yeah. When he came out, Project Exodus spurred when the state of Texas came up with the No Pass, No Play. And a lot of minority students who have been tracked into basic classes were not getting the skills in order to pass that state standardized tests. And I can understand that because I told you in my 10th grade year at Ridgefield, that was what I was a little disgusted by the information that teachers were putting in front of me, and this is what I was supposed to learn. So there's discretion in order to make sure you advocate on behalf of the people who need your voice. That's why they vote you in there. And so he did Project Exodus. He did the Cultural Heritage Tour when they wanted to shut down Wiley. And he said, well, the reason that these kids aren't passing these scores is that we're not giving them a frame of reference. They're not getting any kind of experiences. You know, they don't have the money to take trips. And so for 3 years, he took different groups of kids on these cultural heritage tours where they stopped at different historical sites throughout the country. And he was right. These young people came back with a whole different love for education. Right. You know, sometimes you just have to turn the light on. Yeah. You know, you just have to turn the light on. And so there's a lot of discretion when it comes to my service also. And we are living in a period where it seems that violence is sort of permeating all of America.
Right.
I stop people when they think that violence is just something that's in the African American community. Right. Violence is just kind of covering America right now. There are reasons, I won't expound on those, why I think that happens. But we're losing a lot of young African American men to gun violence, whether it be gang-related, whether it be domestic violence, whether it just be road rage. We've lost a lot of young people to just road rage. And so these are two organizations. If anyone can make you put your gun down, or if anyone can cry and get the sympathy of the community, it's a mother.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with the mothers who've lost young men, and I'm working with the mothers who've lost young men into the judicial system.
Okay.
Because losing is losing.
Yeah.
And the pain is as acute to one as it is to the other. And they're working through their pain in a way that should lead us to a solution. How can we stop it, though?
Okay.
How can we stop it? And so I'm so proud of Her Skin. I'm proud of the Montreal Phoenix Foundation. I'm proud of the Calvion Foundation. I'm proud of Mask, because those are mothers who are saying, and if a mother can say, who lost a son to someone shooting him, can say, don't shoot anybody else. Surely that's someone you'll listen to.
Right.
And I'm talking, and I'm saying, when I'm saying you, I mean that young man with the gun who feels he needs to avenge his friend.
Okay.
If his mom is saying don't avenge him,
Right.
then don't you lose your future.
Right.
Because I'm gonna try to be okay, but you losing your future not gonna give me my son back.
Right. And you know the sad part about that is that group is growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the sad part about it.
It grows every year, and that's why I've started. I didn't have it last year or the year before because of COVID, but in 2020, I did a candlelight vigil similar to what they do on 9/11, and it was just a ringing of the bell, where we had a few speakers. We had the mayor, the council person, county judge, and the sheriff, because the sheriff came and talked about their cold case unit.
Okay.
And how that even though a murder may have happened, it seems it's an old case, they still don't give up on it. And then I had, as many as I could find, family members who had lost someone. They came, and I told them the only pressure I put on them was to come to the mic and say your loved one's name, and we're going to ring the bell.
Right.
But what I think they found healing is that they came and they said the name, and then they said kind of a short summary of how they lost that person.
Oh.
And I only knew about 15, I want to say I had about 25 people come the first year. And we're going to do it annually. Because you're right, we keep losing them.
Yeah.
And what we can't do, and my promise to the families, is that we're not going to forget you.
Okay.
And we're not going to forget that you're hurting. And maybe if we keep saying the names, the names will stop.
And how can they get in contact?
They may go to my website, co.mclennan.tx.us.
Okay.
They may call my office, 254-757-5062.
All right. And I'll make sure I put links. We'll put links in this video so they can connect you. All right. Last few more questions. What's your leadership philosophy?
You know, I'm coming into leadership at a time where there are a lot of people on the leadership stage.
Yes.
What I mean by leadership stage, there are a lot of elected officials.
Yes.
A lot of elected officials. And I think that speaks to perhaps the legacy of Commissioner Gibson. I think a lot of young people, it could be Commissioner Gibson, it could be former President Barack Obama, it could be former U.S. Congressman John Lewis, but young people are looking at elected office as something desirable and effective.
Okay.
For a long time, you would hear young people saying nothing has changed, nothing's going to change. That's why, one more time, and I'm not getting any money for that book, but you have to read
I'm going to read it.
Disinherited.
I'm going to read it.
And so I'm at a time where there are more African Americans serving in elected office across McLennan County than we have ever had. We have 3 on the City of Belmead City Council.
Yeah.
There are 3. We have 1 at Lacey Lakeview along with a police chief.
Yep.
So there used to be the strong leadership, probably feeling that there was this one person, I call it kind of like that king syndrome, and I don't mean syndrome in a bad way. I mean syndrome in a good way, where you have one person who is all intelligent, who is all effective, and is the spokesman.
Right.
Because you only have one person.
Right.
Everybody else are kind of just worker bees and
Right.
helpers. That's not what McLennan County has. And so you can't have that kind of leadership at the top, because it has to be inclusive to, number 1, grow, and 2, nurture what else is on the horizon. And so if you have school board members, if you have city council members, if you have police chiefs and you have fire chiefs, my thought on leadership is that it has to be where it unifies, it establishes commonality, and then it lays fertile ground for growth and education.
Okay. That's a good one. Okay, final one.
Okay.
What's your life's purpose?
Oh, that is a good one. I tell you what, and it has not changed from when I had no idea I would ever serve an elected office.
Okay.
Okay. I always wanted to make a difference, and I think that growing up in my household, and hearing the national news and the state of African Americans coming through the 60s and the 70s, I always wanted to be a contributing factor to making sure that poor people got their piece of the pie.
Right.
Okay, so I always saw myself in some type of social service. That's why my dream job was at the Women's Resource Center under that Project Texas program. That has not changed. What has changed is the fact that God has given me more resources than I ever thought imaginable. I'm able to put my hands and have an impact on programs, on policies, as opposed to just working a program. I see now there's a pathway to create programs, to make sure programs that are created work right.
Right.
And so, at the end of the day, I will know I've had a good day, I've had a good life, if somebody was made better because I came through. Okay. Did I create a program that someone benefited from, and then it changed or transfixed their life?
Yeah.
Did I advocate for or ensure a pathway of success, and someone else was better for it? Did I make sure that we took out punitive measures, or that we took out some roadblocks that would have prevented someone, and because those were out of the way, someone was made better for it?
Wow.
If I've made a pathway for things to be better for people, then I'm good.
Okay.
Then I'm good.
Good. You good, and the community is better.
Yes.
Good. Well, it's been lovely having you. Thank you for coming. I hope the audience, I'm sure they got so much knowledge from you today. Thank you. Thank you for being commissioner. We look forward to keep calling you commissioner for years and years to come. All right. And thank you for joining us. See you next time.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.